Rome's ancient ruins are timeless. They endure the bustling pressures of the modern metropolis. But it's here that I came to find evidence of ancient Romania, once known as Dacia. For someone of Romanian descent, like myself, exploring Romania's past has long been a fascination, in part to gain a better understanding of my own heritage, but also to pass it along to my children. Though Dacia's ancient legacy has long been shrouded in mystery, I knew that in Rome, if anywhere, I might start to unravel clues to its past. Every year, millions of tourists see remnants of the Dacians without realizing their significance. Without a written language and few archaeological artifacts, much of what I knew about the Dacians had been relegated to myth or nationalistic manipulation, especially in communist times. In large part, the true legacy has been lost in the fog of time. This would be an adventure going back in time to answer a few simple questions. Who were the Dacians? What part did they play in history? And what echoes of their past might one find today? Answering these questions took time, a lot of travel, and a special team. One member in particular was artist, illustrator Radu Oltan. Known to me for a long time, I knew of his particular passion exploring and documenting his country's past. Over many years, working in a small studio, a storyteller, Radu brought that long history to life in meticulously researched and vividly crafted illustrations.
Bucuria de a transforma istoria prin imagini într-o istorie accesibilă și ușor de înțeles pentru toată lumea mai ales că este vorba de un subiect controversat, necunoscut și neînțeles.
My own journey into Dacia's past began in Rome. Here, the story of Dacia's conflict with the Roman Empire survives intact on Trajan's column, which stood in the monumental forum built by the emperor and long ago turned to ruin. There, I could follow in precise stone reliefs his two major military campaigns from 101 to 106 AD. The forum, inaugurated 7 years later, was his personal tribute in marble to the might of one man at the very peak of Rome's power. But while Trajan's version of history lives on to this day, the Dacians have been all but forgotten. Yet once I was in Rome, clues to the Dacians started to appear, hidden in plain sight. Atop the Arch of Constantine, 8 Dacian nobles have stood submissively for almost 1800 years, moved there from the Forum by Emperor Constantine. To understand much more of the Dacians' marble legacy carved into Trajan's Forum, I met Professor James Packer, widely regarded for his exhaustive knowledge of the Forum's architecture.
It was the custom, beginning in the Roman Forum, to put up lines of statues of conquered peoples. And then when Trajan built his forum, he did precisely the same thing. Well, if you looked at it from the Roman point of view, when you came into the forum, what you saw was an enormous assemblage of barbarian troops. And they were all very powerful looking, they were all very dignified looking, but their size and their extraordinary character showed what immense power the emperor had displayed in order to conquer them. And as an additional feature, they're all integrated into the architecture, and they're all in a pose where they have their hands crossed in front of them and they're looking down, and they show that they're subjugated to the Roman will.
These Dacian statues were a first for me, a real discovery. So was learning of the existence of as many as 100 of them in the Forum, expertly carved in their dignified poses out of rare imported marbles. Given such an unusual and dominant presence, one wonders why Trajan put so much significance on his Dacian enemies. How many victors over the ages have so displayed or honored their conquered? I could think of few, if any. I asked myself, had Dacia played a far larger role in the history of the Roman Empire than is immediately apparent?
Ancient historians described the Dacians as fierce warriors. Their king, Decibal, was so named for having the strength of 10. Over time, Rome came to both fear and respect him. Ruling from 87 to 106 AD, Decibal tested Roman patience to its limits. He had raised an army 40 to 50,000 strong. He used it to defeat attacking Roman legions in 87 AD, killing a general, Cornelius Fuscus, and captured his legion standard.
When the dust had settled, it was a standoff, basically. He had lost some of the standards, some of the eagles of legions which had been destroyed or captured. This is a very bitter thing for an army, is to lose its standards. And standards, in our case flags, are an important symbol.
This early victory empowered King Decibal and his kingdom, but at the same time, it established Dacia as an increasingly dangerous enemy of the Roman Empire. Decibal had displayed his true colors. The Dacians would not be subjugated to Roman rule.
Seen from the air, the Carpathian Mountains are nothing less than a daunting natural barrier against invaders. deep, narrow gorges, long valleys, and then the Danube River, where 50 years before I canoed the same river waters. My first introduction to Rome's presence in Romania was in 1964. In my youth as a college student in the United States, curiosity about my Romanian origins tempted me to travel back to Romania. Then, already an avid canoeist, it occurred to me one day that a canoe trip down the Danube River's 1,700-mile length would bring me to Romania, then under communist rule. With 8 Dartmouth College colleagues, I paddled the length of the Danube from Germany to Romania and the Black Sea. Our expedition would become a cover story in the National Geographic magazine. It was along the way that we reached the famed Iron Gates, where the Danube River narrows dramatically into a deep gorge. There, we came across a special feature and a sense of dramatic events in Romania's past. This was a stone roadway carved into the cliffs almost 1,900 years before by Emperor Trajan's legions. All traces of the same roadway are now gone. A communist-era dam raised the level of the river about 120 feet, and that roadway, seen from a canoe, would take on a new meaning. It was one connection to learning more about early Romanian history, and in particular, the connection between the Roman Empire and the Dacian kingdom. Poring through old photographs from my expedition in 1964, along with historic records, Radu Oltan translated this information into an illustration that brought that past to life. Would that road be a first step for Trajan to change the course of the Roman Empire?
This brings in the whole question of why the Romans came into Dacia at all, because they were acting contrary to the basic rule of thumb of the empire, which was don't go permanently north of the Danube. You didn't go permanently east of the Rhine, and you didn't go permanently, that is, to establish provinces. And then there was wealth here. I don't think the Romans had a clear idea of how much wealth there was, but they knew that the noble metals, gold and silver, were coming down out of Dacia, and also salt. Now, salt is tremendously important in the Roman Empire because it was virtually the only way you could preserve protein.
Trajan, now in power, broke the long-standing boundary rule in 101 to 102 AD. He sent his legions on a first campaign north of the Danube to settle the score. He and his legions forced Decebal to surrender.
In the first campaign, the end result was victory for Trajan, defeat for Decebal. Dacia was reduced from a totally independent kingdom to a client kingdom of Rome. And in the case of Dacia, the Romans left behind garrisons, sort of to guarantee the situation.
Knowing that the Romans had stopped short of an ultimate victory, Decebal broke the peace treaty shortly thereafter. Dacian raiding parties started crossing the Danube again.
After the first campaign, it seems clear that, or at least it seemed clear to the Romans, that Dacia was getting ready for a second round. The first campaign was over in 101, 102, and in 103 they started building the bridge. So already Decebal had given the Roman signals that they were going to come north. They were going to have to come north of the Danube again.
There are no records to explain why King Decebal quickly chose to break the armistice. Perhaps he failed to gauge Trajan's ambitions. Or was it faith he had in his tough mountain-raised warriors? That alone made me curious to experience the same rugged environment that may have shaped those living deep within. To do that, I mapped a route into the back roads and forest trails of these ancient mountain ranges. This is where I met a peasant family living high on a wooded hillside.
Și atunci eram tânără și tare, atunci nu știam. Atunci nu știam ce e greu. Eu meream la munte și până la munte vreo 40 de kilometri, poate și mai mult. E aici. Și veneam, o săracă, veneam de la munte, dimineața murgeam bacile, murgeam oile, îmi puneam laptele. Veneam că era omul meu și era copiii mai mici. Veneam de la munte 40, luam în spate, de saj în spate, aici avem brânză, aici avem unt, avem smântână. Toată noaptea trebuia și dacă nu auzeai, trebuia să mergi să te uiți la coteță și să faci, că dacă nu venea ursul și toate luau porci și viței. Mama avea 2 porci. Eu porcii dusesem acasă, numai mami mai era, avea 2 porci mari. Bată Dumnezeu, venit ursul noaptea și s-a băgat la porci. Și-a prins un porc. L-a prins și l-a luat așa în brață. Noi, hau, eu cu mama, după el. El, când a ajuns în marginea pădurii, era niște lăstăriși ieși așa crescuți așa în pădure. Și când a ajuns în lăstărișul ăla, știi, atunci a mers mai greu ursul. Și el când a văzut că noi ajungem la el, o dat cu porcul, păstă nu-i s-a dus porcul. Dar nu putea părin pe noi să ne omoare pe urcat. S-a dus porcul dincolo de noi vreo 10 metri, în urmă cum veneam noi. Păstă nu-i s-a dus porcul și atunci când a picat de pământ, a murit și a preznit. Ai de mine, a fost mare. Păi era, hai de mine, domne. Păi s-a găsit un picior odată de dacă aici. Nu știu câți metri au avut, numai de aici până aici, de aici până aici. Nu știu câți 10 de metri au avut. Păi îi trecea peste copaci, îi pășea peste copac. Dar pietrele alea cum nu au adus de acolo de unde le-au cărat? Tot e bine, nu s-au făcut aici. Le-au adus și că îi pășeau un paș și venea cu piatră și punea acolo cetate. Îi făcea cetatea.
Everything about her reflected a strength and toughness shaped by the harsh world in which she lived. Then, too, were the stories she told about Dacians and Dacian ruins. They made us more curious to travel to Sarmizegetusa, the remote mountain sanctuary at the very heart of the Dacian kingdom. Walking the grounds of the sanctuary, on its dramatic 4,000-foot-high hilltop site, the ruins still exude a special mystery. There was more to why the Dacians chose this site than just defensive reasons. Because there's little left to see, and the forest is closed in on what may have been a far larger open area, the setting begged for more description and detail. Later, with the help of Radu, experts, and our team of 3D graphic animators, we gathered all information that is currently known of the site. We turned this information into the most complete reconstruction of Sarmizegetusa to date.
Se știa că sunt ceva cetăți antice aici încă din secolul XVIII. Se găsiseră comori, se găsiseră pietre mari, uriașe. Inițial în secolul XVIII austro-ungarii credeau că sunt romane. Geolog ungur care era ceva inginer de mine și avea ceva cultură și istorică, a zis că ar putea să fie chestii dacice și că a ajuns pe aici, cum știi, trimiși de la Viena. Mi se pare un subiect foarte interesant și foarte puțin cunoscut și foarte puțin popularizat temeinic. Toată lumea știa câte puțin de la școală cum s-a format poporul român, Decebal și Trajan. Și Eu aveam în cap chestia asta de mai mult timp, dar n-aveam curaj, fiindcă însemna o documentare foarte dificilă. Dar excursia la Roma m-a entuziasmat foarte tare și am zis, acum e momentul. Nu seamănă cu nimic, mă, din nicăieri. Ce cunoaște. Exact, nici de la greci, nici de la romani, decât tehnici constructive. Clar au folosit meșteri greci.
Sarmizegetusa apparently functioned as the capital of Dacia. Now, what exactly that means, we don't know, because we don't know the political organization. Whether this was simply a religious site, and it certainly had religious implications, where the Dacians went to perform certain of their religious rites. It apparently was the seat of the king, Decibal. At the time of the First and Second Dacian Wars, it was clearly functioning as an administrative capital of some sort over a confederacy of tribes, of clans, of families. It's a little unclear because the Dacians did not leave records.
Sarmizegetusa was the center of power in the Dacian kingdom. Within its walls, it held Dacia's enormous hoard of gold and silver. High walls and guard towers protected this spiritual sanctuary, its treasure, and the king's residence. Surrounding valleys that could be used to mobilize troops were in turn protected by a network of strategically positioned hilltop fortresses.
Leaving Sarmizegetusa, our team made its way to Blidaru, a hilltop fortress protecting the most vital approach to the sanctuary capital. Impressively sited, the fortress quickly made evident why King Decibal might have felt safe. Entering these deep valleys, shrouded in mist, one can well imagine the challenge facing Trajan's legions and auxiliaries as they marched deeper and deeper into uncharted forests. To help bring the fortress setting to life, we visited Rakosh, where a young team, guided by seasoned archaeologists, is hard at work uncovering remains of a Dacian fortress that once stood there. The site reminds us how expert the Dacians were in settling seemingly impregnable hilltop settlements. A Romanian archaeologist at the dig remarked on the site's special qualities.
Cum se vedea de la turnul de pază care era aici sus. Vederea era cu adevărat spirituală, magică, se poate spune. Imaginezi cât de tare sclipia așezarea în vârful dealului, cu un acoperiș roșu de cărămidă și stâlpii albi de calcar.
Having broken the peace treaty, shortly after Trajan's conquering legions left Dacia, King Decibal knew his actions would not go unnoticed. Fortresses previously destroyed by Trajan's legions were quickly rebuilt.
I think the Dacians did fight in a somewhat disorganized manner. In my mind, I always formulated the Dacians as a militia. That is to say, not a standing army, not a professional army, but a warrior force which gathered at the behest of the king or the clan chieftain or whomever when necessary, and when whatever was unnecessary, they went back to their farms and their pastures and their mines, awaited the next call.
Războinicul dac avea această calitate că tactica romană nu putea să-l oprească. Era un luptător nou, cu arme noi, să zicem așa, pentru care războinicul roman, infanteria romană, încă nu s-a adaptat.
sau cu ocazia asta a început să se adapteze.
A început, da. Vedem după și în cadrul războiilor dacice apariția armurii de braț, manica segmentata, pentru că falxul dac putea să crape scutul legionarului roman și putea foarte ușor să prindă mâna care îl ținea.
The falk was a two-handed weapon with a sickle-like metal at the end, sharp. This was a weapon that the Romans had not come up against before. It surely required them rethinking their tactics. But in the end, Romans had come up against strange weapons before, and they had relied quite successfully on their own short sword, the gladius, running between, let's say, 18 and 24 inches, but sharpened on both sides with a pointed spear at the end. So this continued to serve them well.
Trajan was enraged by Decibal's refusal to be subjugated to Roman rule. Following his first campaign, Trajan gathered an army of 50,000 legionnaires and auxiliaries along the Danube River. To support the movement of his troops across the wide river, his architect and engineer, Apollodorus of Damascus, designed and constructed an enormous bridge across the Danube River. Almost a mile long, the wood truss bridge, resting on 21 stone piers, remained unsurpassed in length for 1,000 years in Europe. Trajan was ready to wage a second, more vicious and punitive 2-year-long campaign. Chased down by Roman cavalry, Decibal, king of the Dacians, slit his throat rather than be dragged in chains to Rome. His death in 106 AD marked the end of Dacia as a powerful tribal kingdom. Emperor Trajan had decimated Dacia, its riches now his. Some 250 tons of gold, 500 tons of silver, enormous amounts of salt, and a vast landscape to be colonized. Dacia's spoils replenished Rome's depleted treasury. In subsequent years, it would fund Trajan's next conquest of the Middle East. With Dacia no longer a threat, Rome celebrated for an unprecedented 123 days. Enslaved Dacian warriors would participate in their gladiator games. To memorialize his victory, Trajan leveled two of Rome's famed 7 hills to have Apollodorus of Damascus build a magnificent, lavish new forum. It symbolized a political and cultural high point of the Roman Empire, a tribute to the power of Rome not to be surpassed.
Well, it's perfectly clear that without Dacia there would have been nothing in Rome like the Forum of Trajan. The Forum of Trajan relies entirely on the fact that the Romans entered Dacia, that they conquered Dacia, that they used the resources of Dacia to build this extraordinary monument.
Michelangelo a dessiné la colonne Trajane, aussi les statues. Il a une phrase très intéressante de lui. Il dit de la colonne Trajane, il n'y a qu'une colonne Trajan au monde. Ça veut dire le dessin, les compositions, la qualité artistique de la colonne Trajan, c'est unique au monde. C'est unique au monde.
At the center of the forum stood Trajan's column, memorialized with 2,000 characters, spiraling up 600 feet. Trajan's version of the story lives on. The Dacians have been all but forgotten.
Below us, engraved into the landscape, almost 2,000 years after they were dug, trenches that protected a Roman legion's siege camp survived the erosion of passing seasons. These mountaintop ruins, their stories largely erased by time, remind us only that there was once a thriving culture. Having seen the lasting impact of Trajan's conquest of Dacia in Rome, one question still remained. What, if anything, is left of Dacia today? Traveling across the Carpathian mountain landscapes once inhabited by Dacians, it's easy to see how they may have shaped the hardiness and beliefs of its inhabitants. I found clues to that past in the routines of people who follow a daily rhythm of life gone unaltered by the ages. One sees them subsisting in these forested valleys with a few cows, sheep or pigs that they might own, vegetable patches, and a place to gather seasonal hay.
Îl știi?
Știu.
Da, nu, la el o să mergem. Dar o să punem cortul sus, pe deal, acolo.
Oriunde.
I watched the same skilled hand hammer an axe into shape before my eyes, no different from a Dacian axe uncovered near Sarmizegetusa. It's mostly in these landscapes that one feels closest to what may have been Dacia. This is the land as they saw it. Looking back on this journey to decode Dacia, what is the legacy of those times? Rome's conquest, punitive as it was, would not be the first for what is Romania today. History would repeat the story of imperial appetites again and again into modern times. In their wake is left a way of life that survives deeply rooted into the pulse of these Carpathian mountain landscapes. It is here, in these remote communities and highland homes, that one feels closest to the distant echoes of a Dacian past. For me and my colleagues on this adventure, this was a journey back into the very heart of what is Romania. In Bucharest, inside the National History Museum, stands a full-size copy of Trajan's column. Surprisingly, it brought me to where I started this journey. Its massive base and spiraling reliefs, as in Rome, perpetuate Trajan's account of his victory over Decibel and the Dacian kingdom. Ironic, perhaps, is that even in Bucharest, the Dacian side of the story still remains hidden from sight.
We owe this film to our friend and colleague, Nicholas Dimitrescu. Without pretense, his exceptional curiosity led him on a journey that would trace his roots to their earliest origins. From rural villages in the shadow of the Carpathian Mountains to Neolithic-era caves and historic battlefields, Nick defined his heritage through the people and experiences that he constantly sought out. In the memory of family and friends, his Dacian spirit lives on.